Okay, hi everybody. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Have to give me a minute. I'm just overwhelmed by the love and support that everyone has given Conrad and me. You are all just a testament to the community that Dave created, how he made us laugh and how he loved us. For Dave, North Carolina really was home. He lived here from the time that he was 10 until he was 50. He used to joke and say, when people said, "Are you from North Carolina?" And he said, "No, but I got here as quick as I could." During the past 6 months, our friends from North Carolina visited Dave, hosted us for dinner while we were in Boston for medical appointments, sent us packages of biscuits and grits, moved into our house when Dave was in the hospital, arranged for friends to bring us meals, and checked in to see if there was anything at all that we needed. We both agreed that this was the right place to hold a memorial. While we are gathered for a very sad reason, I hope that we're able to spend some time sharing our stories about Dave today. I'll do my best to start, followed by a few friends, and after that, anyone is welcome to come and share their memories. So how do I encapsulate the essence of a man who had the gift of turning ordinary moments into extraordinary humor and wit? How do I write about someone who is such a naturally talented writer? If Dave were here, he would have workshopped this with me and there would have been edits. I hope I've done him justice. Dave and I met in the fall of 2003 when I was in graduate school at UNC. We saw the movie with friends, Lost in Translation, and we spoke briefly about his time in Tokyo and how it compared to the movie. And then we didn't meet again for a couple months, and we met at his 38th birthday party, and then spent the next 20 years together, literally from like that moment. He became not just the love of my life, but a source of inspiration and just my biggest cheerleader. When Conrad was about 4 months old, I had an interview for a job that I really, really wanted. And of course, Conrad had woken up several times during the night to be fed, and I was absolutely exhausted. And at 5 a.m., Dave came into Conrad's room and gave me a pep talk when I said that I was going to call and rescind from the interview. He told me I could do this and that I was strong. And later, and then I got the job, which is good. And later, when we were living in California and I had the opportunity to take a position at Smith College in Massachusetts, Dave encouraged me again to go for it. He said that when we moved to California, it was for his dream job. And now it was time for us to move for my dream job. Dave helped me take things less seriously and enjoy life more. In our life together, I kept the trains running and he made sure we had fun. A few years ago, we went on a trip to Italy, and while we were there, we visited Sorrento for a few days. And on the advice of a friend, stayed in a hotel set into a cliff that we could not afford. It was a type of hotel where Europeans go for August. And older, very professional wait staff memorize your name and your drink order. My plan for our one whole day was to take a bus to the Amalfi Coast and see the sights. But once Dave saw the private beach and the young men in polo shirts that brought you endless Aperol spritzes, he tried to convince me that swimming in the Tyrrhenian Sea was a much better idea. In the end, he won out, and I have no regrets. Dave was absolutely the best father, and I sometimes said that since Dave didn't have any siblings, he instantly became Conrad's older brother. They knew how to be completely silly together, and Dave delighted in Conrad's first bit when he was about 1.5 years old, and Conrad put a bowl on his head and said, "New hat." We said, "I love you," every chance we got. It became somewhat of a joke, as it wasn't uncommon for one of us to say, "I'm going upstairs, I love you," or "I'm going to the bathroom, I love you." We didn't have enough time together, but we didn't waste any of it on not letting each other know that we were our favorite people. For our 50th birthdays, combined with our 10th anniversary, we went to Hawaii with my cousins Laura and Craig. We decided to go out on a boat so Laura and Craig could scuba dive and Dave, Conrad, and I could snorkel. None of us had snorkeled much before and we're just amazed at the vibrant sea life. At one point, the three of us held hands and just floated in the ocean. And it's one of my very favorite moments as a family. When Dave was diagnosed with cancer, his overwhelming regret was that he wouldn't get to spend more time with Conrad. In his final months, Dave reached out to many of you, asking you to play a role in Conrad's life as they grow older. Today, I urge you to honor that request, share stories, celebrate your connection with Dave, and become a part of Conrad's journey. This is how Dave will live on through all of us. Dave's legacy lives in the laughter he shared, the wisdom he imparted, and the love he showered upon us. Let us remember him with smiles as we recount the moments that he made us laugh, inspired us, and brought us together. Thank you for being a part of Dave's story, and thank you for being here to celebrate his life.
Dave had some very specific ideas about how this memorial was to go. There were to be all-you-could-eat chicken biscuits. He wanted a guy on a unicycle in a bear costume. and he wanted a tattoo booth with pictures of his face and two lines, one that said permanent and one that said temporary. Right? If you think about, those things you wish you had said in the moment, the perfect thing to say, I wish I had said to Dave, hey, why are we going to need the permanent one, right? Because I think that would have got him to laugh. I think I would have seen that smile. I think it was a smile that we've all seen before when you say something that was Dave Thomas funny, right? He would look you in the eye, he would get that little smile, and he'd exhale and nod, right? It was something that I first saw in ninth grade when my friend Bill Memory introduced me to somebody that I had to meet named David Thomas. And since then, I've never met anyone funnier, wittier, or more capable of becoming an expert at anything and everything than Dave. We spent most of our high school years, as Dave said, going to different high schools together and being in a band that didn't exist, though many people swore they had heard us, called the Inert Gases, right? Since then, we grew up and we got real jobs. But, the real world, it never dulled Dave's sense of humor. In fact, he just became better at it. Dave took a job at the Research Triangle World Trade Center. It was actually the North Carolina World Trade Center in the Research Triangle. And I took a job at a law firm in Raleigh, and we both did our best to act serious. I did a better job of that than Dave did. And I recall going to a program that Dave organized there at the World Trade Center. It was the International Business Forum in 1994. And he had set up all of it. He had arranged the agenda, he had invited the speakers, he had set up the program and done everything right down to putting the name tags together, meticulously organized and alphabetized at the registration table with the name of the dignitaries that were going to be there and their titles, like U.S. Trade Representative and North Carolina Department of Commerce. And I stood at the D's looking about midway through to find mine, and it said Joseph Daya, not wearing underwear. So I tracked Dave down, and needless to say, he pulled out two more fake name tags for me before he finally got to the one that I could wear to the conference, right? That was Dave. That was Dave. Dave could poke you. He would poke you enough to help you get over yourself. He did this at a seminar that we both attended. It was put on by the Department of Commerce. The North Carolina ports were giving us an informative presentation on how we needed to dredge the Morehead City port to be deeper to handle ocean-going vessels with a deeper draft. And just as they put everybody to sleep in the engineering details of dredging a port, Dave asked the question, why can't they just put more water on top? Right? And that was the point at which everybody woke up, right? That was Dave. He had the ability to wake you up. He had the ability to keep you on your toes. He had the ability to make you notice things that you weren't paying attention to. Dave's humor could also be biting. He had an edge at times, but only for the people that deserved it. In that job that I mentioned, he was responsible for a visit from a British dignitary, Sir Neil Shields, who was coming on a trade delegation to the US. And Dave managed his North Carolina visit. And he took care of all of Sir Neil's aspects of the visit, a visit to the governor, dinners, the mandatory factory visit. All of that went swimmingly well. But Sir Neil's staff never acknowledged it, never thanked him. And in fact, on the way out, sent him an email and said, Sir Neil has a 20-minute layover in the Atlanta airport. Is there something he could do? And fortunately, Dave sent his response to me first because it said, perhaps you could buy him a fucking magazine. Right? That was Dave. That was Dave. Dave had an edge. He could be biting, but at the core of Dave's humor, there was a tremendous heart, just like at the core of Dave himself. He could be humble. He could be self-deprecating. Like the time when I went to buy a suit with him for probably the only job where he wore a suit. And we went to a men's store that was called The Hub for high-end men's clothing in Crabtree Mall. And they had a division called the Big and Tall store, right? And so we were at the Big and Tall store. And Dave was getting fitted, and he was standing in front of those three mirrors wearing a suit that fit him perfectly. And he looked at the salesman and said, you know, I came to the right place, but I never realized I was quite so tall. Right? Dave's mastery wasn't just humor. He was a master at anything he set his mind to. And of all the things I saw Dave devote himself to, I never saw anything like the way he cared about Jean and the devotion he had for Conrad. In the enormous universe of people and things that circled around David Thomas, Jean and Conrad were always at the very center of it. In the 45 years I knew him, I never saw him more devoted to anything or anyone than he was to Conrad. He gave Conrad a father who had the gift to make all who knew him laugh and to leave all who loved him with a smile that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. On the death of his closest friend, the poet David Whyte said, "Without his presence, the remainder of my days will be irreparably impoverished." Without his presence, the remainder of my days will be irreparably impoverished. And that's true. Dave has left a hole that I'll never be able to fill. But it's also true that he left a mark that I will never forget, right? So Dave, my friend, I don't need that permanent tattoo, right? I'll be looking for the chicken biscuits and I'll be looking for that smile.
Hi, everybody. My name is Memsie Price, and I'm here to share some memories of Dave as a colleague and a friend. If aspiring not to be a jerk at work seems like a pretty low bar to you, then I'm guessing you've never worked at a large technology company. Dave and I worked together at 3 such companies over the course of 20 years. He was a once-in-a-career colleague who became a dear friend. When I visited Dave in Northampton in October, he talked about his decision to share the news of his diagnosis on Facebook and how surprised and gratified he was to hear from so many former colleagues expressing the positive impact he had on them and their careers. I said, "It doesn't surprise me in the least, Dave." In high pressure environments where posturing to get ahead and frequent layoffs were the norm, Dave was never a jerk. Dave and I started working together in the late 1990s as marketing writers at the former telecom equipment supplier Nortel, which went spectacularly bankrupt through no fault of Dave's or mine. For reasons I don't have time to go into here and will quite honestly never fully understand, I spent my first week of work at a team retreat at that weird high-rise Sheraton hotel that used to be on the beach at Atlantic Beach. I walked into the lobby with more than a few first day jitters and saw Dave with a group of people I guessed were my new teammates. I went to join them, and a tall gentleman with a gray ponytail and suede Merrill slip-ons, obviously a technical writer, stepped towards me and said, "Just for the record, I was not one of the ones making fun of your name." Dave gave the guy a brief but withering side eye, came over to shake my hand, and said, "We're so glad you're here." He then proceeded to introduce me to everyone in the group, giving each person a kind and specific detail about my background. Most of our coworkers were accomplished technologists, engineers, developers, statisticians. We were the word people. Dave and I spent a lot of time having our words edited by technologists. I remember one project where an engineer changed the word offers to the phrase enables the ability to offer. You can see how this would have driven Dave nuts. It drove me nuts too and formed the core of our friendship. Dave loved words like I do, and I don't need to tell you that he had the best sense of the ridiculous of anyone I ever met. That sense of the ridiculous came in handy during a lot of seemingly pointless meetings. In one such meeting, we were sitting next to each other as some executives debated, let's say it was whether a PowerPoint diagram of a technology platform, a marketecture, if you will, should be shaped like a layer cake or maybe more of an infinity symbol, infinity loop. When we reached the point where we were either going to flip a table or find something to distract us, I grabbed Dave's notebook and wrote a haiku about a pony. I don't know why, but it seemed like it might save us from a life of words like marketecture. I wrote, "When I'm in the field, I feel calm and not itchy, unlike in the barn." Then I passed the notebook to Dave, and he wrote this tour de force: "Chewing the brown oats, feeling the breeze stir my mane, pony life kicks ass." We each went on to write a few more. Dave's were always, of course, funnier and more clever than mine. We went on to survive that meeting and hundreds of others. I don't mean to make light of all this or of Dave's career. Dave was extremely good at his job. The companies that hired him knew they needed someone as smart, creative, and innovative as he was. He was a social media pioneer who was unfailingly generous in sharing what he knew about companies, trying to sound like real people in blogs and on social media. He even published a book about it. But more important than any of those things, he made it fun to come to work. In corporate settings that could be harsh, Dave had the courage to radiate kindness, even when it wasn't rewarded or reciprocated. Jean and Conrad, I think every colleague of Dave's ever, and lots of us in the room today, will tell you how much you two were a part of what he brought to work every day. He talked about you often, never in a gushing or bragging way, but in a way that let everyone know you were his favorite people in the world. As I started to think about what I wanted to say today, I went to the archives of Dave's blog to see what he had to say about work. I found a post from October of 2015 reflecting on his father's passing. His words about David, his dad, are a perfect summation of Dave, the son. He wrote, "My father's funeral was filled with people who loved and respected him. He touched a lot of people with his generosity of spirit. That message came through loud and clear, especially in contrast to the people I've encountered in my career who seem so willing to put their essential humanity on hold for greater success at work. There's the apt cliche that says no one ever wished on their deathbed that they'd spent more time at the office. True. But I wonder how many people on their deathbed or worse in the many years between retirement and death wish they hadn't been such an asshole." Dave had a lot of success, but never put his humanity on hold. He was never an asshole at work. Here's to having a work friend who curates a list of unusual names he finds in the company directory. His favorite was Heidi Ho. Imagine my delight when I got to call him up and tell him that Fern Jean Kook was in fact a real person and had just been moved onto my team. Here's to the colleague who organized a conga line through a casino during an IBM conference. Here's to the guy who brought a sketchbook to meetings. May we all bring such generosity of spirit to the workplace.
When Dave, is this on? Yes? Everyone can, okay. When I found out that Dave wanted me to come and speak here today, I was really honored and a little puzzled because my understanding is that he wanted this to be funny. And most of you know I'm a pretty melancholy, somber person. Don't tell jokes. But I am honored to be here and to be among all of you and see all of you. I think it's fair to say, looking out at everybody here, that, collectively, we're not aging well. It's a little less like wine, a little bit more like milk. As other people have said, the thing we remember most and love most about Dave was his humor. He always made us laugh, and he loved to laugh. He appreciated funny people, and there was never a better moment than when you got a good Dave Thomas laugh. And when I first knew him back in the day, he was still a smoker. And when you got a really good Dave Thomas laugh, he would start to wheeze and start to cough. His face would turn red. And you knew, like, oh, that was good. There was nothing like a wheezing, choking, red-faced Dave Thomas laugh. But he was so funny. I was thinking, I was looking back at some stuff he had written, and one I always loved, something he had put online, said, I think of this all the time. He said, one thing I learned from watching movies is if you've finally gotten to the point in your life where you're living a peaceful, quiet time, be very careful of someone offering you one last job. Bronwyn had a post about wanting to create this store, this tiny store in a hipster town that sold all kinds of knickknacks and everything. And Dave told her that it should be called Store in a Cool Place. And then, of course, we all know about the Footstool Empire. So Dave, he was also one of the things I loved about him is his sense of humor was self-deprecating. His description of himself on Twitter said, frequently damp. And I remember we were talking one day in the bar, and online dating was just getting going, and he needed a tagline for his online profile, and he had come up with "not a complete bastard," which I thought was good. But as some other people have mentioned, his sense of humor could be a little caustic sometimes. We had slightly different senses of humor, Dave and I. He was more the witty quip, the pun. I was more, hey, hey. And I remember this time we went, as all of you know, Dave was like a serial hobbyist. He was just like watches. He had 50 watches and scotch and tech, whatever it was. And at this point, his hobby was minor league soccer. So he wanted me and Dave Lagos, to go to see the Raleigh minor league soccer team, which is as exciting as it sounds. So we got there and we're sitting in these bleachers, and it's a minor league soccer game. So I start yelling what I thought were funny cheers and chants. And, it's a minor league soccer game. The players are right there. They can hear you. And so I was going on for a while, and there was a player who had dyed blonde hair, spiked, that, I said he looked like Billy Idol. So every time he got the ball, I was like, Billy Idol. And so after about 10 minutes of that, Dave said, okay, that's enough. Not funny anymore. Even though other people were laughing, he said, not funny anymore. So I was properly chastened and sat quietly for a while. And then the ball went out of bounds right in front of where we were sitting. And the player who looked like Billy Idol came forward to do the throw-in. He was about 10 feet away from us. And I just yelled out, "White wedding!" And he dropped the ball and he started laughing. And then Dave started coughing and wheezing and turning red. And I knew it was going to be okay. Dave loved being with people. He loved hanging out. He loved people getting together. He was up for everything or anything. He was often the instigator of some stuff, always a participant, enthusiastic participant. We came up with this idea to put on a play. So we're going to write and put on a play. And he was like, okay, I want to be in it. So it was great. He played Shakespeare in one play, and he played a detective in another play. And in true Dave Thomas fashion, he decided that he was going to do an English accent for both of those characters, even though that was not really consistent with the setting. But I'll be honest, it really worked. It really worked. And no, it was fun. It was fun. But actors, am I right, Gil? I see you out there. There's been some mentions already about driving. You can't really talk about Dave Thomas without talking about driving. There's a scene in the movie Annie Hall where Woody Allen is talking to Christopher Walken, who's Annie Hall's demented brother. And Christopher Walken says to Woody Allen, sometimes when I'm driving at night and I see a car coming towards me, I have the irresistible urge to swerve into the headlights and cause a fiery crash. And then the next scene in the movie is Christopher Walken is driving. It's raining. And the camera's on Christopher Walken, and he's Christopher Walkening it. And the camera pans slowly. Diane Keaton's sitting in the middle, and she's not really paying attention, and then continues to pan over to Woody Allen, who is terrified. He is panicked. And I think of that every time I rode in the car with Dave. That's how I felt. Dave, before there was such a thing as Fast and Furious, Dave was Fast and Furious. He drove fast and he was furious at everyone else on the road. I mean, if you drove with Dave, it was kind of like a 50-50 question of how you would die. Would it be a fiery crash or would his head explode? I asked him once to drive me to the airport, and he said, I can't. I said, why not? I figured he had a conflict or something. He said, I can't get any more tickets at the airport. I asked him about just driving more slowly, but that had not entered into the equation. He was the only person I knew who wore driving gloves everywhere. He put on driving gloves to go to Bredman's. Of course, we met through the bar, through Hell, which was really like was like family, and we used to even have a family night on Sundays. Everybody would come and we'd watch The Simpsons, and a bunch of lesbians would come and watch Ellen. It was really like a family, and there was a point where I was giving people nicknames until George W. Bush ruined that for everybody. But I gave him the nickname Marlo Thomas. He didn't like that. He didn't like Marlo Thomas. But I explained to him, no, it's Marlowe, appealing to his Anglophilic nature. And he loved that. And so he loved that. And he is, I believe, the only non-employee to have a drink named after him in Hell. The drink was the Marlowe. And it was a Moscow Mule, but we weren't going to call it a Moscow Mule. It was a Marlowe, and he drank them. And he was the only one who had a drink named after him. I went through a Sinatra phase that I forced everybody to go along with. And he, for Christmas that year, he gave me a ID bracelet that said chairman, which I wore for a long time. Then I put it away. Then when I got elected chairman of the county commissioners, I put it back on. And I still have it. I wish I had brought it with me. I'm going to start wearing it again. I think he'd appreciate that. He wrote a beautiful thing in The Independent about Hell and how much he loved it and how much he hated it, both. It had both features. And that thing that he wrote had this when he was talking about the things he loved about it, it had this to say at the end. When the obstreperous stool jockey next to you turns out not only to be the bar's owner, but also a Carrboro alderman. And so obstreperous stool jockey is a moniker that I will forever bear with pride. I loved him. We all loved him. And I think, he loved nothing more than being with all of his friends. And, he would be sorry that he wasn't here today because of everyone here with him. So good night, sweet prince.
This is Richard. We're just going to call Richard one of Dave's cousins.
Now, I only remember seeing Dave once,
Yeah.
but I wish that I got to spend more time with him
That's nice.
because really, he's a good guy. He was a good guy. And I just wish I could have spent more time with him. I could have this is the first time I've ever had a family member die of cancer. And I just wish that I could have spent more time with him and that he didn't get cancer and all that. R.I.P. Dave.
Oh, that's so nice, Richard.
Huh.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm just gonna sit down and you can pass the mic to each other.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm Richard's dad, also Dave's cousin. Dave and I spent the past 19 years chasing each other all around the United States. Dave hosted me. Dave hosted me when, is that better? Dave hosted me when I first went to, when I was apartment hunting for graduate school. I then moved off to Massachusetts and then California, and then Dave moved to California. The time he moved to California, I didn't have a lot of friends there because I'd been working for some companies that were famous for overworking you. And so it was good to have a familiar face there. And then Dave specifically moved to San Mateo, and I specifically moved to San Mateo 2 blocks away. And it was good to have someone who knew the neighborhood, knew the schools. Then Dave moved off to Massachusetts, and then I moved back to Massachusetts. It was good to, at several times in my life, there was one person there who I knew, who either could show me around or I could show him around, as the case may be. But it was good company. I know that Dave, one thing that strikes me about Dave is that he was very soft-spoken, yet he had sharp words for things that deserve sharp words. He outlived Henry Kissinger by a few hours, which I'm sure would have, some people are gone from us too soon, and some perhaps not. But it was good to have Dave while we had him, and I'm sure he would be delighted to see so many people here to share their memories about him.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Malcolm. I used to be the doorman at said club where I met Dave. There was not a day that went by where this guy didn't say something funny, didn't say something insightful, didn't say something thought-provoking. I loved he was one of those guys, one of the few that was able to hang out after we closed. And that was a big privilege, particularly for the group that we were dealing with. He was a fantastic person. I have 2 great memories. One, we went to a football game and we all hung out and we sang Sinatra the whole time. And then the second was the play that Mark had mentioned. He was the bard. It was a beautiful, smart, cleverly written play, and he killed it. When I tell you he killed it, he killed it. And he was the last person on stage, and everybody just standing ovation. And he's here tonight, believe it or not. I believe it. I feel it. And I wish you guys all the best. We all have a digital family now. It's called Facebook. I've literally watched you grow up, and I'm going to continue to do so. And I just wanted to just let y'all know how much I love that dude, and I'm going to miss him too.
Hello today. You are listening to me talk. I'm Tom Webster, and I've known Dave a little over 20 years. I lived in Chapel Hill about 2000 to 2012 before moving to Boston, where I live now. And back in 2013, my wife and I got this idea to run the Boston Marathon. And there's only two ways you can run the Boston Marathon. One is that you're a qualifier, that you meet a certain time in another official marathon. I am not a qualifier. And the other is you can be a charity organ. And it turns out that it's a fairly onerous task. You have to raise an incredible amount of money, and they charge your card for it. And it was $8,000 that we were on the hook for. And it would have been $8,000 a piece. So my wife Tamsin ran officially, and I ran bandit. So I joined her basically a few hundred feet into the course. And the thing about Dave was one of the first people to donate and support us. And we eventually raised all of that money to run the Boston Marathon. And the thing about Dave, we've all talked about his humor. We've talked about how it could sometimes be biting. And that to me was just a sign that you were ready for this. When he would give you that kind of a caustic comment, sometimes there was levels to Dave's humor. And when he would say something like that to you, it was him telling you, I think you're ready for this level of Dave, right? So 2013, my wife and I were running the marathon. Things are going pretty well. And then at about mile 20, we're just at the base of what they call Heartbreak Hill, which is not the worst hill of the Boston Marathon, but it's 20 miles into it. And so it sucks, right? These police motorcycles start driving up past us, and all of a sudden we're pulled off the course. And if you remember the year, it was the year of Obama. And because we were charity runners, we were slow. And so we were nowhere near the finish line when that happened. And we spent the rest of that day just in shock, heartbreak, feeling for the people that had been so horribly maimed. I later met the surgeon who helped so many of them. And of course, we got lots and lots of texts from friends, and we just had a whole range of emotions. Everything from, we were disappointed, right? Like, to train for the Boston Marathon means you're almost running the marathon almost every day towards the end, right? So we're training in Boston winter, and it was really hard, and we were disappointed that we didn't make it. We finally made our way back home to downtown Boston, and I get a text from Dave. Hey, if it's not too soon, could I get my donation back? And that is the funniest thing that man ever said. He texted me the next day. He's like, did I go too far there? It was exactly what I needed in that time. It was a sign that I guess I had been a level, and I was ready. But I'm not so ready for this. So I miss you, Dave. And thank you.
My name's Jerry. I had the pleasure of also being Dave's office mate for two short years, and being his friend for a number of other years that were also too short. I wish it were longer. I have to say, first of all, that I didn't know until just now that the Marlowe was named after him, and that was always my favorite drink at Hill. So that tells you something right there. And also hearing Time is Tight played reminded me of Dave wanting that as his walk-on music if he ever played minor league baseball, which we got into a discussion about. We were at a Durham Bulls game for work, and we started having this discussion about what would your walk-on music be, and talk about the privilege of making Dave laugh. I think I said something like, well, I don't know, maybe Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now by Morrissey. And the great thing about Dave is that he was the king of yes and. You know, he would want to go, if you're lucky enough to find yourself on his wavelength, then he would generously want to continue that. So we went on with that. Well, maybe the fourth movement of Ode to Joy would make everybody listen to the whole thing before I. And that's one of my best memories from what ended up being kind of a miserable job. And yeah, David did have his caustic side, and his humor could sting sometimes. But what I'm reflecting on now is just how generous he was. It's very easy to use humor to subtract something from a situation or to make someone feel less than. And Dave always added to your life or your situation or what you were going through. And just, I think, to be standing in front of a room full of people who will probably all be able to say that David was the funniest person they know, that says something about him, but it also says something that he wasn't just the funniest person we ever knew. He used his humor was a key to his soul and his care for his friends and his family. And it was, I mean, he was gone too soon, obviously. And I know we'll all miss him, and we'll all spend the rest of our lives thinking, oh man, Dave would love that if I had a chance to tell him about it. Anyway, thank you.
So I am Joe's wife, Ann, and I bet you Dave right now is going, are you kidding me, Ann? But I will say, the first time I met Dave, Joe introduced me, and the first thing he said to me is, so you're the woman who's interrupted a beautiful friendship. And I mean, it was, they had lunch every Saturday and with Mr. Thomas, and Joe would never not miss that lunch because he knew there would be hell to pay, especially if he spent it with Ann. So the other thing is that they, all the group was married. Bill was married and Patrick's married. And so when they went places, Joe and Dave were always kind of a pair. And so they were, at, I think it was Patrick's wedding. And they were kind of a pair. And so they were referred to as Mr. Joe and Dave. But I guess, I kind of earned it because I remember that Joe gave me a bracelet, the first thing, and he told me this, David Thomas went with me to buy it. And I went, oh, thank you. I don't work. And so Joe said, it's okay, we'll go back or we'll exchange it. And he got me a new bracelet. And then he said, David was like, how did she like it? And he goes, well, she wanted to exchange it. And he was like, huh, I really like it. But one of the last times I remember seeing him was in Asheville, and I was there taking my daughter Maggie to camp, and Conrad and Dave and Jean were moving to California, and we're in Tops for Shoes, which is a shoe store that, of course, I frequent, and there's David, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he was like, I never expected to see you. And I said, I never expected to see you here. And I know he's looking around going, hey, where's Joe? He said, yeah. I said, nope, Joe's in the And Conrad was just about 4 and just running all over the store. And I was like, he is wide open. And he said to me, he is my favorite person. So, Dad loves you a lot.
Someone has to break the long silence. I'm Paul Flanagan, and I wrote our friend Patrick. It's in Barcelona, and asked him if there was anything we'd like to say. He said Dave drove with him from Mexico. Dave was a friend. And I suppose there can be no stronger words to be said than he was a friend.
As I walk through this wicked world, searching for light in the darkness of insanity, I ask myself, is all hope lost? Is there only pain and hatred and misery? And each time I feel like this inside, there's one thing I wanna know. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? And as I walk on through troubled times, my spirit gets so downhearted sometimes. So where I'd have strong and who I'd have trusted, and where is the harmony, sweet harmony? 'Cause each time I feel it slipping away, just makes me wanna cry. What's so fun about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so fun about peace, love, and understanding? So, where I'd have strong and who I'd have trusted, and where is the harmony, sweet harmony? 'Cause each time I feel it slipping away, just makes me wanna cry. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh, what's so funny about peace, love, and understanding?
This is my late cousin David Thomas. May he rest in peace, and may Conrad and Jean prosper in the year ahead. Cheers!